So I was really glad to hear yesterday that there was a science course given on what is it called? The science of, I wrote it down, the science of managing your feelings. So basically what the professor, he describes what I do and what my point that I've been trying to get across to everybody. But he uses the word introspection, and I should have been using that too because everybody knows introspection, not really neuroplasticity. So anyway, his book is called Chatter, and I haven't read it, but I saw that he knows what he's talking about, obviously, and I can't really recommend it because I haven't read it, but I kind of do because I heard a little synopsis of it, so it sounds like it's good. But anyway, the point is, through introspection, we have the ability to manage our emotions if done correctly. And that is the big emphasis that I want to make. So you can absolutely cause disastrous results if you don't know how to do it correctly, or you can learn how to manage your emotions and improve your life if you do it well. So what I'm going to do is provide you with an example of the wrong way and an example of the right way. So the wrong way goes something like this. So we've all been in a situation where we're dealing with an issue. Well, first, introspection, let me explain what it is. It's basically examining your thoughts and your emotions internally and trying to gain insight and process an issue or an interaction or something, just in case you don't really know what it is. But it's thinking and deep thinking. So the wrong way of doing this, and that's the issue. A lot of people don't understand that they're even doing it. So the wrong way is like, just say you have an interaction with somebody briefly and say you're not really paying attention and that person kind of like says something nasty to you or sarcastic to you or you perceive as an insult, but since you're like occupied by something else, the moment passed, the person leaves, and that's it. You didn't get a chance to defend yourself or reply, or you just were like, what? And then what happens after that is you kind of fixate on that situation. You think like, well, if I was just paying attention, well, I would have said this, or I could have said that. It would have went this way. I would have like totally, made them put that person in their place, or blah, blah, blah. And we just basically obsess over it. And what we think about grows, whatever we think about. So if it's negative, if we're thinking about something negative, it grows. So then we have the tendency to, blow things up in our minds and making them into larger issues than they need to be. So we let this minute issue snowball and spark a negative cycle of self-talk. And then our inner dialogue, which is so important, is 100 times worse than the initial statement was. So then we start beating up on ourselves and saying, well, maybe why doesn't that person like me, or blah 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 blah, and just start going down that rabbit hole. That is the negative way. So the correct way goes something like this. So same scenario I'm gonna use, and so in passing, somebody says something and could have been negative, could have been an insult, could have been rude, whatever. But instead we think like, hey, maybe that person was having a bad day, or maybe that wasn't meant the way I'm thinking it was, or, you know, what, basically, if it was a rude comment, does it matter? Because is it really going to change my life in any way? What that person thinks of me? Is that person going to prevent me from getting the job that I want, or the goals in my life, preventing them from occurring, or, you know, anything that really matters in the big picture of life? Is that going to change? If the worst case scenario is that person doesn't like you, you know, maybe you particularly didn't like that person either. So does it matter? And not everybody's going to like you, and you're not going to like everybody, and that's just life. And so what? You know, chances are you weren't going to be like, I was just going to call that person and invite her or him to brunch tomorrow. You know, it doesn't really matter. So, and if you did want, and if it does hurt you that bad where you feel like, you know, I wanted to be friends with that person, and why don't they like me? Then there's a bigger issue, because why would you want to be friends with somebody who has the capacity to say sarcastic, rude things to you? Then that's another issue. But back to introspection, the correct way to do it. And so you basically, you know, go through it like that, and then you dead it, and that's it. You can do that, and you say, I don't like the way this feels, and I just resolved it in my mind. This person has no bearing in my life, and that's it. Bye. And shut it off. There's another way to go about it, and it is by speaking with somebody. So speaking with a friend, or speaking, you know, with somebody about the situation, because this is how we do things. Come here, Clo, my kitty. The incorrect way is to call somebody who you know is going to perpetuate the negative cycle of thinking. So that is not the good thing to do, because then that person, either it's going to be maybe a family member or just a friend that we have that's negative. So because then they're just going to, you know, co-sign your negative thinking, and then it's just gonna like snowball, and it's going to go in the negative rabbit hole. So instead, you call somebody who's positive and can kind of put things in perspective and say, who cares? And then you can be like, yeah, why was I even thinking of that? You know, why was I even caring? And, you know, so you call somebody who can put things in perspective. So that's how we take care of things. So we do have the ability to look at our issues objectively, like, and I forget what he called what the professor called it, but I know it as a multiple perspective advantage. There's so many names for these things. I think he called it a distant self-talk or something, I don't know, but what it is we can stand outside ourselves, and we can look as if we are distancing ourselves emotionally from the issue, and like as if we were giving our best friend advice. Hopefully you wouldn't perpetuate that negative cycle. Hopefully you would be a good friend and say, you're being, you know, you're being overly sensitive. That could have been this, or it could have been that, you know. But we do have the ability to distance ourselves and use that while we're introspecting. So what I tell my clients is, pretend, you know, what would you tell your best friend, you know, if they were dealing with that issue, and then say, oh yeah, you're right, I would not beat my best friend up the way I beat myself up, you know, mentally. And that kind of clicks. But that is basically it. That's what I wanted to say. There's so many things to say about introspection. I mean, we can use our environment, but I'm gonna leave it there for now. Leave it simple. Join my Patreon today for the limited introduction price that is offering you the basic tier 1 price for all 5 tiers.